Hello, my name is Graham Crawshaw. Welcome to the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami and to the Institute of Supply Management Travel and Events Conference, which took place in June 2017. Here is the presentation all about CASME's best-in-class travel. The summary of a questionnaire that was completed by over 60 CASME members who collectively spend over $8 billion.
Graham is CASME's Service Director with overall responsibility for the quality of more than 175 roundtables and virtual roundtables annually, as well as benchmarking activities covering a broad range of procurement categories and practices. Apart from being a procurement analyst, he's a leading CASME facilitator, traveling around the world to manage events, meeting clients, and support other facilitators. He also comes from the music background, so he's worked with the Beatles, Queen, Pink Floyd, so that makes him really interesting as well. So anyway, welcome, Graham.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I appreciate this is the last slot, so not going to keep you sort of too long today. Very appreciative of ISM to ask me to speak today. They've asked two British speakers this year. The last one was former Prime Minister David Cameron, and now you've got me. David, I understand, came with all his entourage and security. I've got my son who wanted a couple of days on the beach and a free holiday. So hey, that's the way that it goes. So I want to talk about best in class and what that looks like. And I promise this isn't an advert. It's not a commercial. I just want to set the scene as to what it is that we do and who I'm speaking on behalf of, because I'm actually speaking on behalf of our members. So this is what CASME does. We are truly global. When you look at where we run roundtable events, it's on all of these cities around the world. We build up our intelligence locally and then bring it together. As you can see, truly is a global approach that we take. We have 120 clients, and it's those that I am talking on behalf of today because they have completed quite an extensive questionnaire that's what we're going to cover. So first of all, why best in class? Why have we done this? Well, it's very straightforward. Companies that I met during the course of our roundtables say, well, we manage travel the best. We manage MRO, we manage marketing. Everyone thinks that they do it the best. And it's like, how do you politely tell someone that, you know what, you're not the best. There are others that are better. So we've developed this sort of questionnaire, and we've grouped companies depending on how they have responded. For the travel, 66 companies have responded, and a total of $8 billion of travel spend. So it gives it some credibility. What we've done as a result of asking these questions is to actually group companies into saying these are base, stable, leading, or progressive. And we plot them onto a chart, and then they can see for themselves whether they are much more advanced than others or less advanced. And one of the things that we'd like to do for everybody that's participated in this event is not only to let you have a copy of the entire questionnaire and report, but also if you want to see where your organisation fits in to the chart, we'll run that for you. We'd like to do it. Now, we've divided the questioning into 5 different categories to actually work out, well, what goes into being best in class. So you can see those there, designed deliberately to keep a full range of different aspects of procurement. And as we whiz through this, the spend breakdown that we've got from all the respondents, you'll see that airfares is 52% of the total, and then accommodation, food and beverage, ground transportation, entertainment, obviously the rest of that. Now, in terms of planning the travel strategy, you'll see here the approach is very much that people are using one or more travel management companies. And in fact, 69% of the respondents have a relationship with one or more of TMCs. When you look at the influence, so we've spoken a lot these last couple of days how procurement adds value, how they influence. And in fact, the figure from the survey was 78% of procurement is able to add an influence. And by influencing, we're talking about working with the suppliers, being involved in tendering, working with stakeholders. Now, in terms of other indirect categories, travel is quite mature. When you look at HR, when you look at legal, that number is much, much lower. So it's good that collectively we're making good progress in terms of travel. Now I've got some of the charts here, and you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to read every single item out on it because that would be too much. So you'll be able to look at that when you look at the report. I just want to home in on some of the key points that do come from these charts. So managing non-compliance, that's been a topic of the last 2 days that a number of speakers have covered. And so online booking tool, non-compliance, 61% really measure that. Escalation to senior management for non-compliance, 45%. I'm almost more alarmed that there is 18% of non-compliance when there's no consequence. And if there's no consequence, almost what's the point? How are you going to actually drive improvement if there's no impact on that? So looking at some of the approaches that apply to benchmarking, you'll see that it's good that 52% of those companies that responded to the survey said that they were using both internal and external data to do benchmarking. And in fact, in terms of good practice, the answer is getting data from multiple sources. If you're just relying on your TMC, if you're just relying on one source, you're not going to see the bigger picture there. So get involved, get to see the data from different sources. Now, in terms of consolidation, we said that we saw that 88% of the respondents were consolidating with their TMCs and with their preferred suppliers. Don't forget, I'm talking about this consistently on a global basis. We've had quite a lot that's been focused just on North America or the Americas. These predominantly global organizations are taking that global approach, and so consolidation is very much key to them. Let's move on to procure-to-pay processes and look at compliance with using the TMCs or with the preferred suppliers. And you'll see this is high. 61 to 90, and then over 91% are actually using and ensuring that there is compliance, whether that's through policy or whether that's ensuring that the processes that are in place are actually adopted. We've got a slide on it, but typical payment terms are 30 days. Again, a global figure. Some countries you are legally obliged to pay within certain figures, but 30 days is looking at the average. And when we asked, by using this compliance, by using your TMC, what are you actually achieving in terms of savings through an online booking tool? Figure was 40%. So again, giving you something to think about for those of you that perhaps aren't quite there or aren't taking this approach on a global basis. Let's look at some of the policies that are more specific for individuals and employee policy. So we've spoken a lot in terms of policy for air travel. What is included? So you can see on the screen here a number of the different aspects of what is included. Not surprisingly, 98% in terms of using the preferred suppliers, and 90% referring to lowest logical fare. That gets around all that sort of chopping and changing that seems to have to go on in the US. It's something I've tuned into. We just don't have that in Europe. You go from A to B, that's it. There's an airline that will take you there. There's just no pressure to split travel to save money in Europe and pretty much the same in Asia. Lowest logical airfare, definitely that is what is encouraged in terms of the policy. Separately to this, we did a questionnaire that said, when do you use coach, economy, when do you use business? And the results from our membership, it was in that bracket of 6 to 8 hours travel. Typically within the US, there were more companies that were saying domestically it needed to be coach, and typically if it's international, that can trigger to be business. But on a global basis, 6 to 8 hours, and that's a number that's very much increasing. So one to watch out on, because if you actually manage that by policy, that is the way that you're going to take cost out. It may be unpopular, and I'm not saying that there aren't the challenges there, but this is what our members have been saying that the approach that they take. Similarly, an approach in terms of travel, hotels and accommodation. So you can see the numbers there showing the highest ones, booking through a TMC, using the online booking tool, and using approved and preferred hotels. Globally, actually having arrangements and contracts in place with the hotel groups is very much an approach that most of our members are sort of taking. You'll see Airbnb is now featuring on this, but only 35%, and that's predominantly within the US. I think within Europe, the figure was significantly lower, and elsewhere in the world even lower than that. But this is some of the disruption, some of the alternatives that organisations are considering as an alternative to staying in a regular hotel. So again, some other examples of what is included within the policy. Let's move on to ground transportation and look what's included on that. So no surprise that sort of using the preferred car rental services is at 90%. I've got another slide that I'm going to follow this. The use of transport network companies. Again, very much a growth area on a global basis. 31% allow it within policy at the moment. I think if we were to repeat this questionnaire in a couple of years' time, that's something that we'll see again as significantly different. We also separately did a piece of work on the use of TNCs. Spot the deliberate mistake. It's N, not rather than N. Uber by far is in the lead of these companies, mainly because of its international approach that you can Uber in many cities. And I must admit, personally, I love it. I could turn up anywhere in the world and I don't need to speak the language. I don't need to know where I am. I don't even need to know where I'm going. But a car will arrive, it'll have Graham, as the driver can say, and I'm used to hearing all sorts of different pronunciations of my name. You just get in and you go. It's billed back to my UK sterling credit card, and I get this nice email to say what journey I've done, so it's great for expenses. Lyft being predominantly US is much less, and when you then look at some of the other international players in this field, again the numbers in terms of acceptance within policy is also less. So we asked our members, what is it, why is it that you want to use these organisations? Why do you want to use the differences? And it's interesting that convenience is number one, price number two, safety number three. Now you can have a big debate, and in fact the last couple of days I've had the extremes where people have actually hated the idea of using Uber, don't consider they're safe, don't like the antics of their board management. But in terms of safety, when we've discussed this in detail, people like the fact that you know who the driver is, you know the plate of the car, you know enough details, that journey is tracked. So safety is significant. And then reporting, security, travel time, and generally a preference over rental cars. There's so many times now that actually it could be more efficient to use one of these TNCs rather than actually go to the stress of driving and taking out a rental vehicle. Having lived in Los Angeles for 4 years, I can actually drive on both sides of the road. Many people can't. So let's look at some of the SRM activities, supply relationship management activity within travel. And we've heard again this last 2 days. That's one advantage of being last. I've got plenty of people to refer to. You've got to be doing SRM activity. You've got to be looking at the performance of your suppliers. And no surprise that effort is focused predominantly on air travel. Less so, 68% focusing on their hotel program, and then also a lower percentage in terms of the ground transportation. But adopting and using the supplier relationship management is definitely one that is growing, and 90% of spend is incorporated within this program. So if you've not got one in place, it's very much something that I would encourage and recommend that you do get in place. There's a lot of emphasis at the moment across all indirect procurement categories, not only travel, but asking yourself, am I a customer of choice from my supplier's perspective? And it's a really good way of looking at it. It's a different approach, a different way of sort of asking it. Because you may feel that actually you are. You spend a lot of money, the airlines, the hotels will want to negotiate with you. They will want you to have the best deal, and you think you've probably got the best deal. But the question is, well, actually, are you a customer of choice? And again, from different surveys we've done, one of the things that fails is that, as procurement, you do not pay your invoices at the time you have agreed. It doesn't matter. If you've agreed 30 days, pay them in 30. If you've agreed 60, 90, whatever it is, if you're in Italy and you've agreed 150 days, do it. Where suppliers lose interest in you is if you don't stick to what you're doing. And the whole SRM links very, very closely with innovation. So do you want to make sure that innovation is brought to you by your suppliers? Whatever that innovation may look like, and from many of the discussions we've had around roundtables, innovation is typically small improvements that the supplier is making that they want to take to their best clients. It may not be the ones that pay the most or the least, but it's where they are feeling most comfortable that the ideas that they suggest are going to be adopted and well received and move forward. So a couple of things there: customer of choice, innovation, very much part of your SRM program. We asked in this survey, in terms of the contracts, what KPIs, what key performance indicators work for you? So I'm not going to read all these out. They're in the pack that you'll get. But there's no point in having KPIs that are just too many, too onerous for people to complete or track. We've talked already today about the SMART objectives, the SMART KPIs. These are the ones that our 66 members say they get greatest value from, and therefore these are the ones that are worth tracking and then reporting at their quarterly business reviews. So let's move on to tracking and sort of see, well, this whole negotiation process, where does this fit in with these global suppliers? And it's encouraging to see this cross-team approach. So led by procurement, but supported by a cross-team function that's global, but also with the local input. Again, supporting some of the ideas that we heard earlier this afternoon. You cannot take a global approach and ignore what is happening in a local basis. You've got to have input, whether that's meetings, conversations. Let your local teams feel engaged, and let you know what is important, because we've heard culture, very, very different. You've got to get it right. And I hate to be the British guy up here saying it, but quite frankly, if you've got a US policy that you're trying to implement, and you've got a US contract you're trying to implement globally, you are really going to struggle. It's fascinating, some of the conversations, like side step here, diversity. Very, very important, and I know what legislation you've got here that you need to comply with. The tier 1, the tier 2, all the different criteria. I see so many American-owned organisations that then go to their European teams and say you've got to have the same diversity tracking in place, please make sure you've got it. And at our roundtables in London, in Paris and Singapore, we just laugh at that. There is no logical sense whatsoever in applying US diversity regulations on a global basis. The diversity, yes, but what does diversity mean on a local basis? So you need these conversations with your teams to really understand. So in Europe at the moment, there's a great emphasis on ethical trading, anti-bribery and corruption, diversity that's really looking at small businesses. So to give yourselves the greatest credibility, if you're doing a global contract, please speak to your teams in Europe, in Asia, and understand what is important to them. This was the feedback that we'd received from our members on this. Slightly interesting that the TMC contract seems to have very high reliance. So 45% of our members said that they were using their TMC standard contract. I don't know, we've heard some people refer to their lazy approach over the last couple of days. I'm a little nervous. I actually think that you've got to make sure that you are in control of your papers, your documentation, and the approach to your contracting. It may be complex. Involve your TMC, but just make sure that you're not just passing the buck over to them to manage it for you. Because we've also heard that if you've got multiple TMCs, different approaches, all needs to be taken into account. We asked our members in trying to determine where their level of maturity was, sort of what does a combined partnership between procurement and the TMC aim to deliver? And we had quite a long list in the survey, but we shortened it, broken it down, and you can see the responses we've got here. So actually adherence to budget is top of the list, but also reference to the use of innovation, the SRM activities, and even sustainability. So the importance of ensuring that what you've got is sustainable. And then if we also then ask, well, what is most important in order to have from the TMC? And again, the top of the list there was the tools and technology that is going to support. Interesting that the duty of care and that traveller tracking wasn't top of the list. Again, that may be bearing in mind the fact that our responses are a truly global approach, but maybe that's just not quite as important as seen by organisations that are perhaps based in Asia, based in Singapore, and even in Europe. The sense I get, and from some of the conversations we've heard for the last 2 days, it's a very high priority and important thing in the US, maybe not quite so much elsewhere in the world. So let's keep on moving forward. Again, we asked, what are the benefits of this procurement and TMC partnership? And I've got a list here. Again, I know you guys have all got flights to get, so I'm not going to go through each one. It'll be in the handout that you get, but you get a flavour for what is important to both to achieve a successful partnership. Stakeholder engagement. I did want to add this slide in because it's not something that we haven't spoken in detail, but getting your stakeholders on board is absolutely critical. So I think anyone that's actually new to this travel program or new to implementing it on a global basis, these are some of the things that you should consider. Profiling your stakeholders. I know that probably sounds quite obvious, but there's definitely a trend for you to be actually assigning your stakeholders a category, whether it's bronze, silver, gold, just something so that you know that you've got different activities to do to different stakeholders. So your bronze stakeholders, maybe is just be having a coffee with them. Your gold stakeholders, you're going to be doing much more activity. Understand their requirements, use the terminology. I think we've heard some of those themes already today. Don't bang on about cost savings if that's just way down the list. That's not going to get their attention. So align to their business objectives. So if it is all about safety, then great, put that high on your list. The travel category is an interesting one in terms of this demonstrating sort of knowledge. And I know from conversations at our travel roundtables, we have that debate. Do you need a procurement professional that has got experience in multiple categories that then moves into travel and is on a bit of a learning curve? Or do you need that sort of 10, 15, 20 plus years of experience in travel to actually manage the category? The jury's out. I don't think it's that clear cut. I think a lot of it depends on the culture of your organization. I know there are a number of companies that their approach is it's all about the soft skills of the individual managing it. And because getting those stakeholders on board is so critical, that actually get the soft skills right, get the person responsible with enough knowledge about procurement, and then you're good to go. You may not need the 10 plus years of experience in travel management procurement. Often it's asking those naive questions that can help you challenge and develop and move things forward. How to get the stakeholders on board? Start small, get some credibility, do some firefighting, help them out, achieve those wins, and then you can move forward. Okay, so I know I'm rattling through this, but I think that's important. Use your corporate internet, emails, newsletters. Those are the two that are in the 90% plus in terms of how you communicate the travel policy. You'll see some of the others. Printed materials, 15. Shouldn't be surprised at that. So if you're actually working out how to get this message across, then make sure you're using your corporate internet or you're using emails or newsletters to get that information.
I'm surprised social media isn't a bigger number in that equation.
And I would say that, again, remember our findings here are global. I think I would agree if this was a US-centric, probably less so European, but when you come to Asia, it's very much seen as a personal tool. It's not so much the business. I think the use of social media within a business environment, way mature in the US, less so in Europe. But yeah, you look at China, Singapore, it's way down there. So I think that's the reason. This is very much a balanced global perspective from our global members. So the final one here is on engagement and how you should actually ensure that you're giving feedback on business travel. And you can see here, it's a bit split, which would almost imply that it's not so clear cut as some of the other questions that we've asked. So here we've got some business travel procurement teams working with stakeholders as some individual specific projects progress. I think the maturity that takes you to this 360-degree feedback, which we see much more in other categories, perhaps some categories that aren't quite as complicated, is still, I mean, it's a low percentage, 20%. I think that's where we've got to go to. So ensuring that the feedback that you're giving to the suppliers and then soliciting back from them is hopefully something we'd see a much higher percentage in a few years' time. So, summary, what does good look like? We've done this questionnaire, we've identified what identifies organizations as a stable, base, leading, and progressive. And many of them are still in that middle ground. And I think a lot of the reasoning for that is because technology is changing at such a fast rate. The marketplace is also changing so quickly. We wouldn't have had those transport network companies in even 5 years ago. So in terms of what good looks like, clearly travel is one of the highest outsourced categories. So at Casmi, we're very much looking at all indirect procurement. Many of the categories have some form of outsourcing. Travel is incredibly high because of the use of TMCs and because of the support that you need. You need your TMCs for cost containment. I think this particular group is fully aware of that. And here's the sort of the characteristics of what leading procurement functions are looking like. I want to emphasize, this isn't me stood here telling you what I think. This is the findings that we have seen from this survey that we've completed. The results were in April 2017, so it's very current. All the information is as of reported the last few months. So we've had experience. We run these best-in-class questions on other indirect materials. But the characteristics, as you can see, get stakeholders involved, get your external benchmarking, get your compliance regulations in place, ensure you're managing and monitoring everything with smart KPIs, and then round that all off by a fully integrated SRM program where you're actually engaging with the suppliers so that you become customer of choice from your supplier's perspective and you're driving through that innovation.